Hi, welcome back. I've got the castle ready to go. I've put the board on top of another board and then put some paper around it because it's on my gaming table. I'm going to obviously disassemble these, take them off to paint them separately. Key question before we start is really what to do about the coloration on the walls and on the central section, the central courtyard. If I go grey everywhere to do a stone effect, I think that's going to look pretty domineering, perhaps too domineering. But also, when I've checked the sort of historical and, if you like, real buildings, they're not all grey. These stones are a range of colours, particularly where they're building up on the side. They've used obviously local natural stone. They were typically collected and stacked, and although they may look a little bit precarious when you look at the real pictures, they were apparently very carefully selected and occasionally chiseled, etc. So this is a little bit false because it's creating too much regularity in a way. So I'm thinking at the moment to make this more of a buff, stony, different color effect, and then going maybe for a slightly more formal grey in here. But in any event, I'm going to remove these pieces so that we concentrate on painting the main section of the castle first. And then I'll come back and do what I think are relatively easy bits in terms of the roof a little bit later. So we're going to start with some some dark grey lines here, just to sort of bring out the relief. I'll probably paint this first and then see how domineering it turns out to be before trying to tackle some of these inner pieces. The wooden sections, I'm thinking just a quick brown wash. So actually, I think we'll probably do those first in case the wash is a little bit sort of runny, if you like. Then I'll do the dark grey in here, and then see how we go. But obviously I'll let you see what's going on as it progresses. Okay, so welcome back. I'm just going to try and use one of the Vallejo brown washes here. Again, you can always make a wash taking some acrylic paint and obviously watering it down with water. In this particular, just sort of orientate that a little bit better. This particular pot I've had around for quite a while, so I've just added even more water to it, just to see if we've got enough to kind of get through painting. I'm just going to pop a little bit in here with a trial, and then just try and do a little bit and see what coloration we get. I think that's probably looking a bit darker on camera than it actually is in real life. But I'm going to go with this, I think, and then see how we do when that's dry. The inside, I'm probably going to paint this section in here probably a grey just to begin with, and paint the interior white, and put a much darker colour on the floor of the building. Here, I'm not trying to create too much of a over-painted impression. These were wood. Looking again at the pictures for real castles, the coloration of the wood again varies quite considerably depending on what types of wood were available. Let me just come away so you can see that the camera will refocus. Yeah, what types of wood are available in the vicinity, etc. Not convinced looking at that that's a great deal different. If I just show you around here, so you can sort of get a few yourselves as to the colour difference. I think now I've started, I'm going to persevere doing this building. I'm going to probably try a slightly darker variant and see if I can pick out a bit more detail as well. So I'll just carry on doing that and give you guys a view in a moment. Okay, so I've painted all of that. I say painted, I've applied the wash all over the wooden structures of the castle. To be honest, as you can probably see yourselves, I mean, this bit is still drying, sorry, but I'm not happy with that as a finish. I don't think that's what I'm after. If you look back round to this side, which has had a little bit more time to dry, just bring it forward a bit so it's in focus. Let the camera catch up. It's just not made enough of a difference for me. I've still got these obvious lines from where we've got the MDF, and you can see obviously that, you know, the burnt edges. For me, I want those gone. So I'm going to go back to have a look at the paint options and see if I've got something which is a good choice. I may be picking out something like this Vallejo colour, which is a flat brown, just as a good base. And what I'll do is I'll concentrate on doing some of this edging, and then I mean, there is a relief on there so that you can actually feel that relief. So I have a feeling that if we were to paint it and then go across with a lighter colour, that wouldn't be terrible. And so I'm thinking maybe just paint the whole section and then draw down lines with this. What I'm probably going to do now then, this is actually quite dry even though it's just a few minutes. I'm just going to pop one of these, this choice of flat brown into the same paint pot that we've been using and just see what I think in terms of that as an option. It's quite a lot thicker obviously because it's a proper paint. I'm just going to thin it down a little bit with some extra flicks of water out of the brush cleaning pot, and get a trusty cocktail stick to give that a little bit of a stir, and then see what we think in terms of that as a flat colour, a good base colour. I'm just giving that a bit of a stir off camera. Nothing dramatic happening there. So let's have a little look at what this might look like. Okay, as you can see, much darker and actually covering, you know, providing a noticeable covering on the actual wood itself. However, we've still got some of the lines showing through, and I mean, you pay your money and takes your choice. I think that's going to be, for me personally, once I've put a highlight on that, that's going to be far more like the effect I'm going for, I think. Possibly hard to see without the light being on it. Let me see if I can get a bit more light on there. Maybe not. But obviously we've got a very noticeable difference now between the wash effect and the flat brown that I'm painting over. I'd possibly come back to this single section and try and paint the wood effect in before painting the rest, but I'm feeling fairly happy with that. Just try and move this around a bit so that you can see obviously the difference. Oops. So that's quite noticeably different between the two finishes. We've obviously got some work to do in terms of getting coverage into all of the various nooks and crannies now, which is a little bit harder because we haven't had quite the flowing effect of the wash. But I can tell you that I can still see these thin lines, so that will give me a guide when I come back a bit later and start to pick out the paneling with a highlight or a midpoint or mid color. So I'm going to carry on doing the rest of that, possibly just for contrast purposes, paint the inside, as I said, maybe grey, and then come back and let you have a little look. Okay, so I've gone pretty roughly round with what's this, a number 4 brush actually. Painted obviously the flat brown. I've done doorways, I've done these. Again, not worried too much about that at this stage in terms of being precise, because I've still got the walls to paint. I've done the doors and everything outside. Well, sorry, apart from the window sills, obviously the rear sections back here. Hopefully you can see a little bit as it's drying. You're revealing the darker inside sections anyway. So I may, when I've had a little look at how good it looks, to be quite honest, when we've painted inside, I may just very well leave this. One thing I was going to say was that having the stand, or having the base, sorry, for the actual castle itself means that you can lift it up, get in under the various areas that you need to, without feeling like you're going to break the model. So I've been lifting this base just carefully, to get around and to help with angles, as it were. You can see I've also painted the inside stairwells or staircases, so that's all good to go. So I'm going to clean up this brush, select a slightly smaller one, and then I'm going to start having a little look at maybe the courtyard, or perhaps actually doing these walls so that when I get to the courtyard they're out of the way. So actually, no, I've looked at it, probably the walls and then the courtyard. So back shortly. Okay, welcome back. I'm giving the what is actually another Vallejo product. It's a surface primer in grey. This is, I don't know where this came from actually. It's been on the paint bench for some time. I selected it because I'm going to paint these walls white. I'm also going to paint the upper structures white, but I'm going to concentrate on the base for now. I'm just going to take a little sample of this. It's actually quite light as a grey, but it is obviously a primer. So let's give that a go and see what we think. I mean, probably good enough on its own actually. And now we obviously have to take a little bit more care about where do we decide to draw the line. I think I'll stop about there, and obviously keep away from trying not to overrun on the wooden edges there. I think we might end up with a few coats of this, because as it dries it may not dry in a completely even fashion. It's really easy to see the brush marks. Little tip for you: if you brush down, you can quite often make a lot of the brush marks disappear just by giving a very light brush the other way. I'm going to carry on with this. I'm quite happy with the way that this is looking at the moment. So I'll run around the model, give you a bit of an update. Obviously I'll be painting inside and out. Yeah, and hopefully it will start to take shape then. Okay, so welcome back. As you can see, I put the light grey Vallejo undercoat on now. I've actually put a couple of coats You can still see that there's some variation there. I'm tempted to leave that because I think it looks a little bit more realistic. It's contrasting quite nicely with the brown. I've left the brown, obviously, edge around the wooden frames. And now I'm going to move on to tackling this inner courtyard. Just going to find some suitable undercoat for the inner lines, and then we'll come back and really mark these out. I'll move the camera, get prepped, and show you how that looks. Welcome back. As you can see, we've got the wood painted here. We've got the walls as I described earlier. What I'm going to do now is go on to paint the inner courtyard. Have a little look at that. And the technique here is going to be fairly simple. What I'm going to do is line through the dark edges, you know, effectively the grouting, if you like, of the tiles. I've chosen something which I haven't actually used. It was actually in the plastic, so I don't know how long it's been there. But again, it's another Vallejo service primer. This one is a Panzer Grey. What I've decided is this section here is going to be very dark with a proper grey finish to the actual paving slabs, if you like. That's going to allow me then to treat the walls a little bit differently. So what I'm thinking of the walls is that they'll be more of a buff, sort of sandy browny mix, which I've seen on some of the pictures, keeping this as very much more the formal courtyard setting. So I'm just going to give the paint a bit of a shake, pop some into one of the little tins that I use, the little sort of trays, and then start to line it. I'm still using quite a thick brush, but I think I might drop down a size. So this is just a size 1, I think, as opposed to the 4 I was using. I think this is a 1 or a 2. But I'm just going to start by lining out a few bits, and I'm not going to worry too much about how precious that line is. There's a slightly thicker variant here which I'm going to just be a bit conscious of, because whilst I could keep it that thick, I might actually, when I come to paint the lighter colour, reduce that gap a little bit just to make it work with the remaining slabs. Oops. What I'm going for here is just a general feeling of the squares. It's a bit difficult this way trying to not block the camera, but I think you get the general gist of what's going to happen. So this is going to be quite some time for me to actually line out. But as you can see, we're just going to try and build up that sort of cross effect at this end, and rely on sort of lighter grey to come in and create that sort of paving slab bit. I've gone over the line a little bit there, not to worry, because we'll certainly be able to rectify that when we come back to paint the proper little squares. You might remember some of these over here and a few here were ones that I drew in using old MDF bases as a template. But yeah, I don't think this is going to take too long. It should dry fairly promptly. So I'll turn the video off, come back and show you when it's all lined in, and then start to look at the effect when we start to put the lighter colour on to create the stone definition. See you in a moment. Okay, so I've lined in all of the courtyard. I've also continued the lining onto the road section, onto the sort of entrance section into the castle itself. As you can see, some of the lines have bled a little bit into the actual squares. That's fine. I wasn't trying to be too careful with this one. I'll be much more careful when I put the sort of stone definition in. What I have noticed though is obviously because this continues out, I wanted to have the continuity of that line coming down. It's made me think about what I want to do about the sides. So what I wanted a differentiation between the courtyard and the wall section, but I think I'm going to continue on and use this by lining out all of the brickwork on the sides, and I'll get my differentiation by putting different colour top stone colour to what I use in the courtyard. So courtyard, I'm thinking a much lighter grey, probably a mix of darker greys, maybe the odd brown, just to give a bit of variety on the wall section to make it look completely different. I'm also not sure what to do about this wooden line. I actually quite like the fact that there's a wooden line there, but I'm definitely going to get rid of it on this wall section. I don't really want to see that. I want that to all look like stone, but I think I'm going to leave that brown line there for definition on the wall. Just for completeness, I've also put the same dark grey undercoat inside. I'm probably going to I'll probably paint this a lighter brown on the downstairs floor. Just let the camera catch up in terms of focus. So yeah, we'll probably paint these walls. Excuse me, just make sure it gets there a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I'll probably paint these walls a little bit light brown, but when I do the same thing on the upper floors, same base will be dark grey, upper floors will be interior will be the same colour as the walls. But we'll come back to that. I'm going to finish off lining out this this wall section by continuing the grey, and then we'll come back and start painting the inside courtyard. See you shortly. Welcome back. As you can see, I've finished outlining all of the brickwork. I've not been too tidy. There's two reasons. One, speed, but also when we look at the side, this actual probably can't see it very easily, but it's kind of etched around the sort of impression of the brick, and I really wanted the dark paint to be in those sort of edges and make sure that we've got good coverage. So just before I go on to do much more in terms of the stonework, I've got some leftover dark grey primer in the pot, and what I'm going to do is do the underside of all of the roof work with the same colour. So obviously it's not visible. I'm going to be fairly rough about it, but I think this is just a nice finishing touch. I'll bring up, obviously cover the entire bottom section and just make sure that if anyone were to, I don't know, look at it as we lifted it off the model, it looks finished rather than, you know, its current state. So I'm going to finish off using the undercoat and then come back and show you how to deal with the stonework. So this is the effect just with outlining the brickwork. Now we'll start to put some precision around the stonework. Okay, so thanks for coming back. I finished painting the underside of the roof. I'll come back to that obviously a bit later. I also put the undercoat on the inside here. For now, we're going to return to the stonework. Got three choices here. I don't know why I picked these particularly, but you know, they seem like sensible choices. I've got a Foundry Charcoal Black 34C, which is the top colour, if you like, or the highlight colour in the black triad. so I'm considering that for the outside stonework. I've got this lighter effect here, which is actually just a brush on primer from Army Painter. I've got a few bottles of this, so that might be something that I choose again for some of this, just because I've got a little bit more of this. Then the other thing, and I don't know why, I've got this this green grey, which is another Vallejo colour, 886, and I'm drawn to this. I don't really know why, but it does offer a chance to do something a little bit different in terms of the coloration. Obviously you need to give it a proper mix, but I'm tempted to use that on the stonework in the courtyard and then the brush on primer around the edges. So what I'm going to do now is get a much thinner brush, put a couple of, just give that a bit of a shake, just try a little bit of this on some of the paintwork. I'm just going to rub that off actually, because it's not mixed properly. I'm going to try initially this, the Army Painter on the side here, just to see if I like the contrast effect with the actual really dark line that I've drawn. You can see now it may not be dark enough, but I'm going to get a couple of bricks done properly and see what I think. Give it a shake. Now, just because I am painting this after fixing it together, I found it a lot easier to sort of manipulate the castle on the board. So I'll be, when I want the fine detail, I'll probably be sitting that almost in my lap, just sort of leaning right over. But for now, just so you can get the sort of rough effect of what this would bring, let's just have a little look at that. Now you can see that that's actually quite light. So what I'm going to do, leave that one there for a minute, in that style, and then maybe, obviously I need to do this edge, but I'll leave that for a moment. Just bring the camera in, so you can see the sort of effect that it's going to bring. If I now contrast that with the effect of the foundry paint, allow me to clean off the brush. Just next to it, I'm just going to run the foundry paint and see what I think. Okay, and I think already so I've gone over the edges a bit there because it's quite awkward doing it this way. I think already, given that we've got this really dark line, and that it's rendered quite interestingly on the camera actually, but I think I'm going to use this foundry colour for my brickwork, and my only choice I think is going to be, do I use the grey green or the lighter green for the courtyard. But I'm going to run round with the foundry and do all of the outside I think first. Now I say run round, this is obviously going to take quite some time. As I said, this is the bit that I want to try and get a little bit neater. Obviously you can still go back at any point and reline, so it's not too much trouble, but obviously I'm going to try and do that as carefully as I can from the outset so I don't have too much repainting to do. So I'm going to carry on doing that with the foundry paints, and let you have a look at it as soon as it's done. Thanks. Hi, welcome back. Thought I'd show you a bit of progress and how far I've got with the painting of the wall. As you can see, I've got obviously it lined out. There's a few areas that have gone a bit rough, but I can come back and sort those out a bit later on. The little bit there that's missed. However, the big issue, as far as I'm concerned, is that this is too uniform. So what the next stage for me is to I've got the original foundry colour here that I've been using on the wall. I've also got some Vallejo green grey. I've also just picked up Arepa Paints Driftwood Brown. So what I'm going to do is put a mix together and then start selecting out the odd brick and just filling in, well, sorry, just giving myself enough variety that this starts to look a little bit more realistic rather than this very plain, almost cartoony effect coloration I've got at the moment. So I'm not going to do anything too dramatic. I'm just getting a mixing pot. I'm going to squirt some of the paints in here, mix them around, paint a few. I'll move the board around because as you can see, I haven't actually done anything over here. So I'll just randomly put some colours. Then I'll change the mix again, go around and do a few more. And the only ones I'm thinking of keeping sort of more uniform are going to be the roof, sorry, the courtyard tiles here. I think they're going to be a little bit more uniform. Everything else, I'm just going to introduce some variety so that we start to look a little bit less uniform. I'm going to put some filler in this gap as well. I'm going to get some decorator's cork and fill that up first, just to make sure that I lose that line. So probably that will come first. Mix up some paint, spread it around, and as soon as I'm ready to go, I'll give you a view on the video. Hello, so welcome back. I've finished putting some different coloration on the brickwork. The white bits you can see are bits of filler that I've left in the model. I've got to go back and do some relining. But I'm actually a lot more pleased with the end result. Not sure quite how well that's coming out on the camera, but there's a nice sort of tonal difference between the brickwork, between the different sort of bricks within the sort of construction. It contrasts quite nicely with the white upperworks. What I'm going to do now is do some relining to tidy up some of the edges, get rid of this white, and then pretty much that's the base part of the castle finished, with the exception of obviously tying in the roof line. I've still got the inside here to paint. I think short term I'm going to paint that brown just for speed, and then we're going to move on to, excuse my arm, getting finished with these. So again, I think this time around for these ones I'm going to be doing this white front and then edging in brown. So I'll probably do the white of this first, and then when I get the brown out, I'll go the inside of the these works here. I'll say the first job is to get some of the original Panzer grey and make sure these lines are correctly drawn back in. The filler that I've put in there has helped to mask some of that depression, that we get there on that line. And I hope once I put the black in, sorry, the dark grey in, that will really remove that as an eyesore. Yeah, so I'm just going to get a paint brush, do that, and as I say, then start to work on the roof. So as you can see, I've picked up the upper section. What I'm doing now is just, I don't think I want it on that top section. I'm just going to roughly line in the same colour that I put on the walls, which is an undercoat or a primer. And again, that is a Vallejo. This one is a grey, but as you can see, it's coming out quite light, which is fine. The brush I'm using is a little bit rough, but given that I'm just doing an initial coat, it's fine. You can see the line here. I'm going to go around with a fine brush and actually pick out the detail of that, and that will be brown, and it will match the flat brown that I've used on the wooden parts of the first floor, or the courtyard section. I'm actually going to paint in here as well with the primer. I might get a bigger brush to do that. I'm leaving this the original grey that we've got from our Panzer Grey primer. So I'm going to run round and finish the white. As I said, it doesn't really matter if you go over the top. We're going to put the roof on, obviously. I'm going to try and lose the edge a little bit so that we don't see that too much. And I'm going to take this line round just for continuity, really. And I'll come back and, as I say, use a proper brush in terms of getting a nice fine line. Let's move it over here. I'm working at a little bit of a distance, making it slightly awkward. But I'm going to paint this white first because I think it's going to be easier to do that. And then I've decided that this roof section is going to be a dark blue. There's a foundry colour which I think the foundry refers to as a storm blue, and I'm tempted to use that for the actual tiled roof sections. But that's partly about toning in the coloration of the figures that I've got for my little test upon a warband. But the other reason I like it is that it will do quite nice contrast in terms of running a highlight down the cocktail stick, which is emulating the curvature of the tiles that a lot of samurai castles used. Yeah, you can see the general principle. I'm going to carry on doing that to all of the sections and paint the inside. I'm not going to worry too much. I mean, you can see that it does dry in, even though I've put the primer on the MDF. So I suspect that we'll be doing a couple of coats of that. By the time I've done the three roof sections that I've got, two the same size and then obviously the larger one, by the time I've done all of that, I think this one will happily take a second coat. I'm rapidly approaching a point where the game is due, so it's the early hours of the morning, and I'm just trying to finish this off so that when I have it on the table tomorrow, it doesn't look terrible. And I think I may just, for tomorrow, paint the white single coat, and then maybe paint the initial coat of the roof. But I'll carry on doing this and then restart the video. Thanks for joining me again. As you can see, painted the first stage of the walls upstairs. I've not worried too much about the lines. I'm going to go back, as I said, and line those out properly in the same flat brown that we used for the bottom wooden sections. Now I'm just about to take the right colour to put the first roof colour on, at which point I think that's going to start to really create the overall feel of the castle. I've been considering what colour to do it. I mentioned earlier some foundry colours. My concern there was that they would end up being quite grey and quite dark. So I've selected a couple of Reaper paints as an alternative, just to sort of lift the whole model. So I'm going to try the sort of effectively blue triad, which obviously you can see the numbers there in terms of the triad. There is a darker version that's the first one in the series, but I don't want to use that. I'm thinking that's quite dark as it is, and that will make a nice little contrast for the highlight. My only concern really is, have I got enough of this paint? So I'm probably going to water it down fairly well just to increase the coverage, because we've got the two main roof sections in terms of the actual top roofs, but then we've also got obviously the side pieces here and on some of the larger items. So they'll end up being quite a bit to cover. I'll just perhaps use the camera out there. You know, that's what we're trying to cover over. So I just want to make sure that we don't run into an issue that we get halfway through and then I haven't got sufficient paint for it to last. But I'm going to mix it up and start to paint, so I'll be back shortly. Okay, so I've put a bit of a squirt into the paint receptacle, dripped quite a lot of water in there just to give me a real fluid mix. I find blue to be quite a good coverer, and it's one of those that you can get away with mixing quite heavily. Definitely going to need some more. This will do for a starter that we can illustrate the principle. I've returned to my number 4 brush in terms of size, and I'm just going to concentrate on running down here. I might come back and paint these a different colour. These top sections on some of the models could be, you know, quite a bright gold, for example, but on others they were very much the same colour as the roof in terms of real castles. So I'm just going to try and get into all of these, keep spreading the paint out. And yes, this will be a little bit darker. Try and get in all the edges there. But again, as I say, we're going to come back and think about highlighting some of the cocktail sticks to act as that sort of indicator of the roof being a little bit more prominent. And in reality, what this was the actual ridge line of the shaped tile that they used on the actual roofs themselves. So again, just making sure that I get some good even coverage and sort of soak into all the other back portion there. Again, working a little bit just going to pop the camera light on actually, make sure that we get better. Hopefully that makes a little bit of difference. You might be thinking that it looks quite blue, as in quite bright. I think I probably agree with you. What I'll do when I get the highlight colour is just take a look at how garish it looks in terms of contrast. So it may be that I mix the highlight and this undercoat just to give myself a little bit more of a blended look. But in terms of, you know, going for blue and being a bit brighter, very happy to do that, because as I say, some of the real buildings did have quite a I wouldn't say garish, but certainly a notice me sort of look about them. So I'm going to carry on doing this, give you a view on it when it's all finished. Okay, so I've given the roof sections a once over. They're in the process of drying. I don't know if you can sort of see that on the camera, but you can see that it's a bit of streaking developing where I obviously put the glue. I'm just trying to work out in my own mind when that dries. Should I just go around with a second coat, a thicker coat perhaps of the blue, which I may do, or I may just take advantage of that when I do the highlighting, because it's pretty much created the same sort of effect. You can also see that you can clearly see the roof tile sections that were on the original cardboard part of the model. I'm just as well trying to and ah about whether I pick those out with the highlight. So anyway, I'm going to give that a chance to dry. While that's drying, I'll probably just tackle the board that you can just see over here, because I want to get a base colour on that as well, and then take advantage of the fact that these are drying and the roof sections are drying to make a bit of progress on that. I have just spotted though that I've got to do the sections here. So I'm going to pull the model in now, paint those up, and then it will be in the right place on the workbench to tackle the basing. Just a quick update, I've used some of the blue paint to fill in on my water sections that I've got on the base. I'm using the Citadel Agrax sort of earth shade, I think it's called. Can't actually see the lid anymore, the title anymore, because it's obscured. But this is quite good stuff. I'm just adding it to the paint wet, so that it gives me a little bit of a different colour. Starts to look more like a murky blue colour, and just darken up the whole effect. Not bothering too much about where it goes. Obviously, there is a relief in the actual section that I've cut out, so we should get some darker spots accumulating. I think I may come back as well and stick a little bit of a tuft in there and try, and when I put the liquid water on, the model water on, that will actually sort of soak in and try and create a nice little impression of maybe some reeds or similar. I've just put the blue on really, A, to make the base more interesting, but also because some of the castles were obviously surrounded by moats, and although I haven't modelled in a complete moat, if I want to kind of introduce that into part of the game, just having the odd little bit of water around just makes that a little bit more credible. So I'm going to go off and look for a proper base colour for this base. I'm going to cover it with a bit of sand and flock as well, but just for speed, I'm just trying to get some of this done as quickly as possible so it can be used as a gaming piece even if it's not entirely finished. So we're back shortly. Okay, so I've answered my own question about base colours. I'm actually going to be using this on a teddy bear fur gaming table that I've created, or gaming mat. As part of that, if you're familiar with the technique, you brush in some acrylic paint and then you wire brush it out so that you get that sort of grass effect. So it's worked really well with the sort of skirmish scale. I'm not sure I'd want to move too many big units over it, but certainly sort of test of honour, bolt action, those kinds of things, it works really well. And as part of that, I came up with a bunch of greens, just green acrylics that I was using. So what I'm going to do is continue that on the base short term and then look at my longer term options. So this was just some acrylic paint I've got online, just various shades of green. I'm probably going to start with this one as being initially the best colour to blend in. So I'll just get the big brush again, which as I said is a size 4. Probably could use a bigger brush, but I just want to make sure that when I go into the edges that I've got a bit more control. And actually, because I'm going to put it on fairly thinly, the small brush will be quite a good option, I think, in the long run. So I will put this into a receptacle to do it properly. If you just look at the colour there, let me just move that in so you can see. That's the sort of colour we're going to do. And I'm just going to loosely spread that around for the time being. It's a bit bright. As I say, this is just about getting something short term that provides me with a bit of, a less stark contrast between the board and the gaming table. And I will come back and do this properly. I think I might go and have a look at some of the other darker greens actually and just mix it in, so that it creates a much more realistic effect in terms of the gaming mat that I'm going to be using. So I'll go off and find some more dark green and mix that in and come and show you the effect. Okay, so I've popped the roof back onto the castle. You can see that I've just put the undercoat on here and need to edge out the wooden sections. In situ it doesn't look too bad. Obviously this isn't the finished base. I'll be putting some proper flock, some sand and then some flock and doing it properly. Just for illustrating how far we've come, that's where we are. The blue is okay. My issue is that you can see here that we've got some of the glue lines, so I'm definitely going to need a second coat there. and obviously I haven't painted inside the buildings yet, but actually in terms of the overall impression, not too bad. So yeah, I think I'm going to do these roofs again, just tidy up the base and show you in close-up.